Hi, welcome back to Agent Insider. I'm your host, Andy Jewell. Thanks for joining me today. Today I have a guest, Don Hale. Don's been a real estate agent for a while. He's with Keller Williams. Yep. Don, tell us a little bit about you. How long you been with Keller Williams? How long you been in real estate?
Yeah, I've been in real estate for 16 years, going on 17.
Yeah.
Before that, I had an industrial supply business. I sold the exciting field of wire rope, chain, and chemical transfer hose.
Ooh.
Actually, because of my nature, I get excited about that too. But yeah,
how long were you doing that for?
About 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, so your journey sounds a little bit like mine. There's a lot of just natural transitions. I was a bread delivery guy, and then I went into insurance because that's just like, that's a career path.
Right.
For you, it's chemical hoses and then real estate.
Yeah.
Why the transition? Why did you change?
Oh boy, a lot of questions there. Good questions. The biggest change was I was getting tired of it, and my general manager said he wanted to buy the business when I had industrial supply, right? And so I knew every contractor guy. I knew every owner of businesses throughout the county who were in any kind of construction. And of course, all the refineries bought our products too. And so it's interesting because I had some wonderful people work for me, but it was a different mindset too. It was, hey, I've got this great idea how we can make hoses differently or make construction, do things differently to be more organized. Oh, that'll never work, Don. And then later on it was, well, it worked this time, but I don't think it'll work again, right?
Right.
Good guys, but just kind of a different mindset. And in real estate, it's how can we get together and make it work? Everyone's very positive, very up, very cool in that environment. Although I didn't know it. The reason I went into real estate specifically is because we had done well in our industrial supply business, but and had invested in real estate. And I read every contract. I didn't know what I was reading, but I had learned long ago because I worked at a newspaper. I didn't understand high finance. I read every finance article for 2 years until I really understood it. So I thought I'd do the same thing with real estate. And then, of course, I could have kind of retired at that point, but I was like, I have too much energy. You probably already know that.
Yeah, you're a hard guy to pin down for stuff because you're a high energy, moving all the time.
You bet. Yeah. And it's a blessing, right? It's a gift I have, and I'm grateful for it.
So your personal experience of investing in real estate as an investor is what kind of drew you into real estate to make that when you made the transition?
Yeah, that was the original. But meanwhile, I just fell in love with it, helping people find their homes. How cool is that? And I was going to go commercial at first because I knew so many people commercially, but I really fell in love with the home buying process, helping people, some who didn't have any idea what they're doing, others very experienced at it, and guiding them and coaching them along.
So what do you see? Because you've been in it for a while, you're guiding people, and like you said, you see the whole gamut, whole range of people that are new to it, people who are experienced in it, people who probably think they know more than they really know.
Oh yeah. I bet you get that in insurance too, right?
All the time.
My cousin's uncle said.
Right. I read on the internet. So what are some of those pitfalls that you see that home buyers fall into when they're looking to buy a house? What is it that they just make mistakes on? Left to their own devices, they're going to screw this up.
Not choosing a good mortgage person. It's like, oh, I know this guy. And there are some, and I don't want to get into names or anything, but and not the people, it's actually larger institutions who don't react as quickly as some of the smaller, loan people. I would say that was maybe the biggest. They also, they give me a box to be in. So Don, this is our price range, say $525. And we want 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and they'll say it very specifically. We want a yard this big. And I'll go, okay. And so I will set up a program for them. But then they'll go on Zillow or something, and they'll go just right outside the box. Right. How about looking at this one? And I go, fine, I didn't put that in the box to find for you. I tried to expand the box a bit just so we'd have 11, but you're kind of way outside of here. We go there and look, and they want to buy it. And then they pull another $25,000 from a relative or they reach a little deeper in their 401k, right? To get
afford what they want rather
to
than
really, yeah. I guess those are probably the two things. Everyone has such a different look, a different feel, a different perspective on it. Some people need, we set up a roadmap because here's the roadmap because you don't know what you're doing. It's kind of like you're going in this blind. You're probably the same thing in insurance, right? People really don't understand insurance except they know they have to be covered, right?
Right.
So we set up this is the first step, second step, third step, fourth step to make it convenient for them, to make it so they know what's coming next. And then after that, what's coming next.
Do you find like those steps change a little bit between, person A and person B?
Yes and no. We see patterns.
Right.
So after a while,
Sure.
the pattern, I make sure I cover as much different as we can.
Right. I'm sure like there's like if you're in this category, these are the steps you're going to do. If you're in this category, these are the steps you're going to do.
No, the steps are pretty consistent.
Okay.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty much we're going to do the same thing the same way.
Each person is so individual, and so we explain things differently, but the steps are pretty consistent. Get a mortgage first. Let's get you set up. And then, we go over, that I represent them totally and completely, that we're going to look at these houses. If we've seen 5 or 6 houses, then we'll readjust because I want that internal monologue externalized.
Right.
So I know what you're thinking as you're looking at a house. And that's for buyers. And then, we go over, what's on the contract just a little bit so that there's no surprises. What is earnest money? That kind of thing. Explain it.
Right.
It's
what is earnest money? Because maybe a lot of people don't understand what earnest money is.
Yeah, earnest money is just good faith money saying, hey, I'm going to give you, say, 1% of the price, $500,000 house. I'm going to put $5,000 money into escrow so that if I back out the last minute, you are not left holding the bag. You get a little something. It's just saying, hey, I'm really into this. I'm serious.
Now, is that something that's, you don't have to do earnest money, obviously, but is that something that's pretty common? Almost everyone's doing it.
Very common. If I represent a seller and they put no earnest money on, I've lost.
Not a serious offer.
It's not a serious offer. Yeah. And I don't think I've ever gotten one without earnest money.
Yeah. Because that's something probably some new home buyers, first time, may not think about until they're there. And then you're like, wait a minute, you want me to put money down that I could lose if we backed out of this deal? Right.
I have stories, right? It's like, okay, so I'm going to protect this earnest money for the inspection or the financing addendums. If something happens, I will get your earnest money back. But 5 days before closing, do not go out and buy all new furniture. We had a lady who did that. She went and bought all new furniture. It brought her score down with the bank just enough that she lost the loan and lost her earnest money.
Oh.
And so I tell a story almost every time just to make sure don't buy a new truck, don't do anything different, and be careful.
Right. While you're buying a house is not the time to go buy a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. And early on, I quite frankly, I made some mistakes. And there was one where I personally, because I was not diligent enough, lesson learned, that I actually paid, they lost their earnest money because of me, and I gave them that earnest money back from my own pocket.
Right. So that's the integrity issue, right?
Dude, integrity is everything.
Yeah.
And integrity is interesting because it's who you are. It's great for business, but I don't do it because it's great for business. I do it because it's who I am. Right.
Yeah. If you do it because it's good for business, that's a marketing technique or something. That's not really integrity.
No. And I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you have such integrity ever since I've known you.
Thank you.
You've always come through with saying whatever needs to be said, sometimes not great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And we lose sight of that just in general in people. Like we get so focused on an end goal, right? Like I need to make this sale. I need to make this much money. I want to buy this house. And then we fall into a trap of the ends justifying the means.
Yeah. But no.
Right. But no, exactly.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like the scripture talks about it, Jesus talks about this, says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose your soul? And I think that is something that even if you're not a believer, that you can understand that concept that Jesus is teaching us.
Yeah.
That if you are willing to do anything to get something, you lose who you are. And at the end of the day, that's not what makes you happy anyways.
Right. And I'll tell you what does make me happy: handing keys to somebody or calling up, Mr. Smith, I just want to call you up. You no longer own a house. Right. From the seller's perspective.
Right.
I love making that call.
Right.
Oh, thanks, Don.
Well, could you walk us through just a little bit of that process of the home buyer? So if I'm coming in, I'm buying the house with you, what's my process look like when I meet with you to start buying a first time home?
Well, first we say we get in touch with a loan officer, and I have a guy I've worked with that I love. I mean, trust my life with, and I know I'll get it done at 10 o'clock Sunday night if you need him. We actually, well, I don't want to, he saved a deal once because he was involved at the beginning. But anyhow, so first of all, get the financing together. Make sure you know what it is, because I have had people who are looking at $800,000 houses and then realize that they're, we looked maybe 3 or 4 or 5 homes. I don't do this anymore, but I did. And they were, we can only afford 600,000. So we want to get that set up. So the expectations there is clarity there. You know what your loan's going to be, and you know where you're going to be. So that's the very first thing, is to get set up. And yeah. And if needed, I can give someone 3 options.
Sure.
For loan people. But like before COVID, me and my team were doing 100 properties a year. Right. So we know, I've got the experience to know who's going to work. And
right. You don't need to talk to 3 people if you know the right person to talk to.
Oh, right. But if they want some options, I'm happy to do that. There's like these big internet companies, that I'm not going to name names, but online, forget it. Oh my gosh. If I have 2 offers in front of me, and one is from, XYZ National Corporation, advertises nationally, blah, 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 and someone I know that they'll get the job done, I will advise the client to go with on these offers. That's when I'm representing the seller, right?
Right.
To go with the stronger offer that I know will get it done. But anyhow, so here we are, and the roadmap again kind of is then we kind of say, what is it you want in a home? What's important? So I listen. I take notes. Very important. I take notes on listings too, because I want to make sure I get it right for them. And then we go over some brief stuff, like what's a short sale, and that's just, there's hardly any anymore, but those are people who are way behind on their mortgage payment. So we get some definitions. We also talk about if you go to an open house, just say, hey, I'm represented by Don Hale. Just so you know when you go, because I prefer that when I do an open house that people tell me, I've got an agent. But if they see we look for all the for sale by owners out there to help my client. I tell them, if you see a for sale by owner, please call me, because sometimes they're way out. They have no idea what's going on. Or they might advertise 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, but their septic's only good for 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. And there's a lot of things in there. So, look, if you see somebody, you're driving by, you see one, photograph the information, and I'll call them if I haven't already brought that person to them. Right. And then I represent, and I also tell them legally, I represent you. Okay?
Right.
I am got your back, and I fiduciarily, statutorily, and more importantly, as we said, morally, I represent you. I'm not going to say, if we're looking at a $550,000 house, I'm not going to say, well, my buyer could pay $595.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play that hand. I'm going to be very smart about the negotiation part. So they know. That
part matters a lot, with anything, right? So I don't know if I've told you this story before, but when my wife and I bought our house, we bought our house when we were pretty young.
Yeah. But
before we did, we had went and got a real estate agent, and because we were like, well, that's what you should do, and we wanted to told him what we wanted to spend, and this is where we feel comfortable, and so he had us get pre-approved with his guy, which was fine, which is good, right?
Yeah.
But then he would only show us, and we were approved for more than what we wanted to spend. But I'm pretty conservative in how I spend money, because I'm like, well, just because I make that much money today doesn't mean I'll make that much money next year. And what if something changes? And so I want to be comfortable.
Entrepreneurship, by the
right,
way. Yeah.
right, exactly. I want to be comfortable in my payments. I don't want to be like, oh no, I gotta max out my what I'm paying. And so he would only show us garbage dumps inside of the price range that we looked at. But then he would show us nice houses that were outside of what we wanted, but inside of what we could afford.
Right.
And ultimately, we ended up firing him and going a different route, because we realized that moral integrity wasn't there. And I think that people forget, like, that moral integrity, probably when you're looking at who you're working with, you're going to work with a realtor, to work with somebody like you that has that, I'm going to do the right thing for my customer, not because I'm going to make more money, but just because it's the right thing. And whatever I make or don't make doesn't really matter. Doesn't come into play when
Not
you're
at
making
all,
that
really.
negotiation, right?
Yeah.
And if you make a mistake, you're like, hey, I screwed up. Here's your earnest money back. Like those sort of things are huge.
Yeah.
And I think like when somebody's looking around, just like, who do I work with? Working with somebody like that is going to make or break your deals, and you don't want buyer's remorse on a house, right?
Oh gosh, no.
You don't want to be like, hey, my realtor talked me into buying this. It wasn't really what I wanted. It was more than I could afford, but I bought it, and now you're in a 30-year mortgage.
Oh, and I've had that conversation many times. I say, hey, this is okay. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for what might happen?
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of go over it one last time. Because in that whole process, again, I go over the contract, right? We talk about, okay, here's earnest money. Here's, when it's going to close. And here, if you want to you have 10 days for an inspection, for example, right? So that's if you have buyer's remorse, let's talk about it. Some people do get real psyched.
Sure.
And you talk them down saying, no, this makes sense. It's in your price range. It's in a good neighborhood. It's not quite as big a house as you want, but makes sense just from my perspective.
Right.
Right. And
right. It's good to have somebody that's helping you walk through that process, manage the emotions that you feel confident is there for your good, not for their pocketbook.
Objective.
Yeah.
Being objective.
You mentioned an inspection there. What are some of the keys when somebody's looking at an inspection that you should really pay attention to?
Oh boy. I'm going to answer this differently. What are the common things that come wrong? Okay. So some of the common things is having the, if septic inspected, of course, but when we have this inspection in front of us, here's an inspector, a certified inspector has come in and said, hey, here's 10 things with the house. So we look at safety first. We also look at what the appraiser from the bank comes and says, oh yeah, we will lend it. So there's another inspection. So we'll make sure we have those things taken care of. Lots of times, not lots of times, but sometimes, for example, if a FHA loan, they can't have any wood showing on the house outside. So I've done it actually. The clients have done it with permission from the owner. Can we go paint the house a little bit? Right.
Yeah.
But the heating is a real common one that needs attention. Usually people have not had it inspected in years.
Right.
And then anything safety wise. Hey, we got some rot on the back deck, with a little kid fall through or something. Usually it's not a bigger issue for safety, but that's number one. Number two is a common one is the drains will drain back into the foundation of the house. That's a good question. I have to think about what are some of the common ones. A GFCI plug will not be grounded. That happens a lot. So we have asked for a certified, we'll say, please have a certified electrician correct this.
Yeah, the electrical is an issue. Like I from insurance perspective, right? Knob and tube wiring and aluminum wiring. So you get away from knob and tube, then you went into a lot of places were using aluminum in the 60s even. And so you're like, okay, it's not knob and tube, but it's aluminum. Yeah. And the issue that you run into, I was talking with an electrician friend of mine about this. He said the issue is not knob and tube and or aluminum. It's not like it was bad wiring.
Right.
It's that it was wired for a different type of lifestyle. So, and I thought about this, like, it makes some good points. He's like, so you've rewind back into like the 40s when knob and tube was very common.
Yeah.
And they had fuses. He said typically you would have one light in the middle of the room, and you would have maybe a lamp. TV was just becoming a thing. Vacuum cleaners were not even super common. Yeah. But you would have maybe a vacuum cleaner. Now the amount of draw that we put through that wiring is 10, 20, 30 times more electricity that we're pulling through those wires. Yeah. And so to his point is like, the issue is that how much electricity we use now comparatively with, air conditioners. Right. Everybody has a TV in every room. You have, Roombas and, tablets and cell phones and microwaves, and like just modern technology is very electric centered. Yep. And so he said the problem is you pull so much power through those wires that they overheat in the wall and they start a fire. Yeah. So if you lived like 1940, you'd probably be fine with knob and tube wiring. Right. But the problem is you're living like it's 2024 with wiring that was meant for the 1940s.
Yes. And I've sold those older homes. Actually, the banks, depending on the loan, et cetera, some of the banks will still accept knob and tube. Yeah. It's okay. It's just, I will make sure they understand all the implications and recommend at some point they change it out. Yeah. Or make, in the inspection, have the owner, but that's very expensive, but it depends on the deal. They might say, no, I'm not going to change it. Okay, see you, bye. Right. We pull out. Right. It's
something to be aware of it because on the insurance side, it definitely impacts insurance as well. Now, some people are not honest with their insurance company about knob and tube wiring, which can, depending on the company, make a problem for you later because then it's a
interesting. Yeah.
Because if they ask that through the application process, whether you answer it wrong or your agent answered it wrong, it could be it's a material misrepresentation. So let's say the application asks, is there any knob and tube wiring? And I say, no, there's not any knob and tube wiring, but there is. The insurance company then, after the fact, when there's a fire and the house burns down, the insurance company goes, well, we should have never insured that house, and we would not have if you'd been honest with us. So that's a material misrepresentation, and it voids the insurance contract. They refund you your premium, and you have no coverage. Yeah. So that's like that. Some people are like, oh, we just what they don't know won't hurt us. It's like, well, actually, it could. Right. So you have to be careful on some of those things. But there's companies that do insurance for knob and tube. I'm not saying it's an uninsurable risk. It's just something that you have to be careful and honest about because it could change how a claim gets settled.
The aluminum is mainly in mobile homes.
Yeah.
And before 78, it's very difficult to get financing because of that and some other things involved. Yeah. They changed it. And,
How is mobile homes, so after 78, so the 90s, 2000s, how is that as far as buying a mobile home on property? Is that difficult?
Not at all. Okay. No, it's great. It's just not before 78. That's very difficult before 78. They're specialty companies, but they're hard to get a hold of and usually out of state. So yeah, no, but no, after 78, it's very common and very easy. Okay. There's a couple of things that are not normal, with a normal house, but easily overcome.
What about, so our market now? So do you share, because people are all like freaked out. Some people are, the sky is falling. Interest rates are up. Yeah. Right. Housing prices are up. Yeah. And so it's kind of a weird market. What do you see locally, Whatcom County, Washington State? What do you see the market doing? What has it been doing over the last year? Kind of where do you see it going over the next 6 months, 12 months?
Well, the feds now in August are thinking very much about a rate decrease. Mm-hmm. However, that might not affect or might affect homes, right? Because there are two different things. They're two different animals. One's based on the bond market and the other's based on what the feds, right? The feds say. So you're up against that. Here's what I found, because it's been happening. It's slowed down, way down, is that people are now getting used to it. They're borrowing again more from their 401k, or asking mom and dad for more help. And so it's, I mean, there's very little on the market. You know, there's 2 months supply as a rule. In Linden, it varies from a 1 month to 1.5, and sometimes 2 months over the last year of supply. In other words, 60 homes on the market, 30 have sold in the last 30 days.
Okay.
That would be a typical one.
So I'm just going to repeat that back, because you hear that talk a lot, but for someone who's not in the industry, right? Yeah. 1 month supply, 2 month supply, 3 month supply. So what you're saying, a 2 month supply then would be how many homes sold in a month, in 30 days, and then how many homes are there available?
Right.
So to your point, what you said again, which I was like, that just clicked for me when you were saying it, because I've heard that term a lot, and I was like, what does that really mean? So if we have a 2 month or 3 month supply and we sell 30 homes a month, there's 90 homes listed currently. If it was a 3 month supply, a 2 month supply.
I'm sorry.
2 month supply. And if Whatcom County has a 2 month supply, we sell, for picking numbers, hypothetical, because I don't know what the actual numbers are. Hypothetical would be 30 homes are sold every month or sold last month, and there's 60 homes on the market. Yeah. That's a 2 month supply. Okay. That makes sense.
Right. And so Everson right now has 3.5.
Okay.
Bellingham has, last time I looked at 2 weeks ago, this is 2 weeks ago numbers, 110-ish on the market and sold 65 in the last 30 days.
So it's less than
so it's slightly less, but I would call it 2 month supply, average, right in there. And then, Ferndale is, 45 days ish, and it'll vary. Sudden Valley, surprisingly was like 18 sold and 19 on the market.
Oh, wow.
So, but it'll change to 2 months. In a month or so, it'll change. Also, summer's a little bit different in how much is available. Right now, August, if you haven't bought, a lot of people will want to buy, and they want to get in before school starts. And so now it's just, boy, we're hitting it real tightly if they're going to make it before school starts.
Right. Yeah, it's trying to.
And then I also like for my numbers, October's always been great. And I think it's because they want to be in before the holidays.
Right.
And then it just drops off, of course, in December.
Nobody wants to move in December or January.
Yeah. I've had some really good in the days, in 2019, I have had some great, in 18, some great Decembers, but as a rule, it's tougher. And then January really drops off.
What about technology? How do you see technology impacting the real estate market?
I'm a poor one to ask on this.
Okay.
Because I am a person-to-person kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And because of God's grace, I've been able to do very well on that. I've call up, at one point for 8 years, I'd call up 20 people a day in person, or go and see them and say, hey, who do you know that needs to buy a home or sell a home that I can call today, right? And who do you know? And you've been the recipient of that.
I've had those phone calls from you.
Yeah,
yes.
In the most loving, kind, fun way. It's not a pressure thing or whatever. So, technology is it. It'll be interesting to watch to see how AI plays on that, because they'll get it down what works even faster, better, harder, over and over again. To a point of I'm concerned about manipulation.
Sure.
Right. And, but I mean, it's like you go to the grocery store and a lady buys, she changes from Dawn soap to Joy soap. Right. And then she, buys extra toilet paper, and then she, buys a different, like more yogurt. You put all that together, it means that more than likely she'll be pregnant within 6 weeks. That's AI kind of going on. So I think people will be able to see, maybe even before you know it, that you're ready to buy or sell.
Right.
So it is important to be right up there and get those numbers.
What about as far as like through the buying process? Like, because I agree, like AI, the predictive modeling that they build,
right?
It is kind of scary because like you see it now, like if you use Amazon, right? That you go on to your Amazon account and Amazon is like, hey, you need to buy this. And you're like, I didn't know I needed to buy that, but I said, dude,
let me buy it now.
Anyhow, Like, it's like Amazon knows what I want and what I need before I know what I want or what I need. So I agree. Like the way that the predictive models work and the amount of information that they can pull through and generate definitely will have an impact on targeting who's going to sell, who's going to buy, and what you're going to buy and what you're going to sell.
Right.
I get that part from like the marketing piece as an agent.
Yeah.
I think that, and that may not be the next year, might not be the next 5 years, but within the next 10 years, it will radically change.
So in other words,
marketing.
in 2 years.
Right. It could be. I use this as an example when I think about technology. When I started with insurance 19 years ago, almost 20 years ago now.
Okay.
I went and I got a smartphone. And this was before the iPhone came out. This was just before the first iPhone. It was a Windows phone, but I could get my email. I could go online on it.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was kind of like, because up to this point, the only people that had smartphones were BlackBerries, and those were like CEO, right? Like you had to have like some sort of a C-level person to get those. And so it was kind of just coming out, the Windows phones and whatnot. I remember I went to a meeting with other insurance agents, and several of them were like, I'm never going to get that. You have an electronic leash now. Like everywhere you go, if someone can't wait till I get back to my office for me to answer their email, I don't need them as a customer.
Oh yeah. No.
That was the response, right?
Yeah.
2 years later, the next year iPhone came out. Within 2 years, like smartphones exploded. Within like 3 years, you're seeing elementary school kids with smartphones.
Right.
So yeah, so the amount, the way that the smartphone technology exploded on the scene.
Yeah.
I think the same thing's happening now with AI. So it is difficult to know. It might be 10 years. It could be next year. It's going to change the way we market for sure.
And so as a realtor, I think something believable about having an agent giving you the facts in person, because you don't know what that's presenting, No,
you don't. And you don't know what the algorithm that's working in the behind the scenes.
Right.
But how do you see technology helping the buyer or the seller? Like Zillow was a technological advance.
Sure.
Where you took now all the listings are available to everybody basically. Right. So, and people were doing virtual walkthroughs. Where do you see technology as being a benefit to a buyer?
They'll if they choose to be, they'll be better informed.
Okay.
In other words, they'll have a lot of information at their fingertips. What to believe will be an issue, but they will have some information, and thus I think asking me better questions. Right. And as we know, being on the social media sites and just blasting it out is very effective advertising. Mm-hmm. It's proven that even that, and that will continue. And so the technology part will be, how do they connect better with people? In other words, how do they get the emotion going?
Right.
And there's a science of that. I mean, back Paco Underhill wrote a book, Why We Buy, back in I think the 80s. And it's still true today. Yeah. Several principles. If movie stars do it, then I want to do it. Mm-hmm. If everybody else in the neighborhood's buying like this, then I want to buy like that. Right. And then,
buying is interesting. Like people make buying decisions like all the time. They're like, this is what I'm going to do, and here's the reason why. And the reality is, it's probably not actually the reason why. You're buying and selling anything based on emotional connections. And then you come up with facts to support an emotional connection.
Oh, okay. So here's one of my philosophies. Okay. When I sell a house, I want the outside to look as good as it possibly can, because mama, who usually buys the house, will fall in love with the house before she walks in. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, well, the kitchen isn't big enough. That's okay. Oh, the master bedroom is a little too big. That's okay. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden she'll start justifying.
Right.
Because she's already made an emotional decision.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. It's the emotional connection that that's why you're buying it.
Right.
And then you'll make all the and if you don't like it, even if it met all of the criteria, you're going to have reasons why. Like,
you're going to find
there's
something
a scuff on that mark.
Exactly.
Look at that wall. They got someone dinged it.
Yeah, the lawn isn't very green.
Yeah,
whatever. But they'll figure out a way. Yeah, that's so true.
What's one of the most unique properties you've sold?
Oh boy.
I don't warn you about any of my questions.
No, that's okay. It's great. When does this go live? Because I have a listing coming up next Thursday.
Okay.
That's going to be pretty unique, a blueberry farm. Let's see.
I don't think it'll be live before next Thursday. So if you want to use that, you can use it.
Well, it's a blueberry farm. You know, it's got UPIC, it's got production. Yeah, you know, they're part of a co-op, and they sell blueberries to Hagen's.
Oh, cool.
And they have a house on it, and there's some real challenges. Undeveloped fields, so they're not in full production yet. They're not making the income that I would like to see, but that's okay. It's a development, right?
Right.
But now they're realizing that they need to be with family more away from here.
Yeah.
And so that's really unique. Businesses I sold, I think, you know, houses are pretty standard.
Mm-hmm.
But I sold a web locker recently down on the waterfront, Bellingham, a restaurant.
Okay.
That's a weird sell because you also have to sell what the potential could be.
Right, right.
Not just what their incomes are, which that was pretty decent, but just, you know,
how are you going to take this over and turn it into something even more? Yeah.
And when you say that, because the ones that really piqued my intellectual interest, like, oh, how can we market this in a creative and different way? Right?
Yeah.
I think the hardest one I've had so far was 40 acres on Brown Road, a dairy farm that had been neglected, so much so that there were a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, drug addicts, et cetera, who had been invited on the property. There were needles all over the place. And it was just, there was an acre barn, right, where the cows would come in because it was a dairy farm. And an acre of barn.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big
and
barn.
So you really have to, you know, change the thought pattern of what you could do with the barn. Could it be storage? Could it be this? Could it be that? And you know, we talk about Christ in life. I pray for each one of my listings for the right people to find it. And this one there was someone circling, and they just seemed like the perfect fit. But I said, hey, God, you take it, whoever you want. You know, let's not Don's will or not the owner's will, but your will be done for whoever's going to be blessed by it. And all in all, it turned out to be the perfect buyer, an actual well-known name in Whatcom County. And they're going to do it right. They're going to fix it up right and reestablish it. And, but also it had a silo. What do you do with the silo?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we were thinking, oh, our VRBO turn it into a vacation rental by owner.
Right.
Who wouldn't want it? I mean, you know, because vacation rentals by owner, short-term rentals, you know, the more unique it is, the more that it's filled. Right. And so more renters. Anyhow, and then another guy we can make a climbing wall out of it. So we were trying to figure out what to do with that. And then we also started to suggest maybe having indoor pickle courts underneath the roof. But it was a real unique property. I'd say that was one of my more unique ones. Yeah.
So kind of the same vein, if you could pick a property anywhere in the world that you could either buy or sell, what property would that be?
Oh, buddy. There's two ways to look at that. One would be for sale, but I'm always thinking investment.
Right.
You know, for years I've taught, I'm not doing it this minute, but I've taught an investment class for real estate agents to help their clients. Because a lot of real estate agents have never owned a duplex or a fourplex or commercial property, right? And so I try to teach them what is hard money, what does cap rate mean, you know, some of those things. So my mind always goes. Someone said, if you got $1 million tomorrow, what would you do with it, Don? And I go, well, I'd immediately buy an apartment building or a fourplex, because then I could depreciate, do the accelerated depreciation and wouldn't have to pay any taxes. You know, or, you know, and they're going, no, I meant, where would you go in the world?
Right.
Right. Where would you vacation?
You're like, I can't get out of real estate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about the tax consequences immediately, right?
Buy an apartment complex someplace else, so that way I could have a tax write-off to go visit my apartment complex.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I would,
so you would buy a fourplex right by Disney World.
Okay. Well, I was going to get there. I am a Disney fan. Very, very big annual pass holder in Disney World. And right now I would buy on the Atlantic Ocean. love it over there. Love to see the sunrise over the water. It's just so inspiring. And it's just, I can go into it, but it's like, yeah. And it's only an hour away from Disney World.
That's the key right there. I think
for
that's
me,
the
my
key.
wife likes walking on the beach and everything.
So there you go. It's like a win-win. She gets the beach.
Hello.
You get Disney World.
Right.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
What's the best way for somebody to get in contact with you, Don?
Well, I've looked this up. Don Hale, Whatcom County, Washington State, realtor. Just Don Hale, realtor.
Okay.
I think that's going to be universal. And I'm the only Don Hale in the state. So
if I just Google Don Hale, I'm going to find your contact.
Probably find it. Yeah. Real easily. Realtor maybe behind it, or real estate behind it.
Okay. And do you do, like you mentioned just briefly before we wrap up, I want to just touch this because you mentioned it there, that you do classes for realtors who want to do and help their customers with investment. Yeah. What about just Joe Blow, who wants to become a real estate investment? Right.
Well, obviously then, I would, not to brag or anything, I'd be a great resource for them.
Yeah.
Because, all that I've done, I do hard money, I do, rentals, I do spec homes. And I've just continually been educated on it.
So do you kind of, so if I was like, hey, Don, I want to get into real estate investment. I bought my house, but I'm not really a real estate investment guy. Would you then you take me and go, okay, Andy, here's the things we need to look at while we're looking at properties.
Yes.
Here's how do you want to think about the next property you're going to buy?
Right.
How much
There's
money?
a lot of criteria here.
Right.
What is your expectation on return?
Right.
Right. Because honestly, there are some lovely East Indians in this county who I help a lot of. All right. And their perspective is, this is for my kids and my grandkids. Mm-hmm. Okay. The traditional people that I've helped is like, they want a return and they want to get a 15% return. How are they going to do it? Mm-hmm. Right. How can we get a 10%, or whatever it is, because they're more risk, the more return. So what's safe and, safer,
right?
Or just what can I get for my own retirement? So we want to find out what their expectations are first. What do you want? What makes sense to you? Are you ready for the risk? And I try to explain the risk, right?
Right. There's always risk. If there was no risk, everybody would do it.
Everybody would do it.
Yep.
And just make sure they're clear. And then we talk about, the more money down, the more money they will pocket every month. That will be, and then I look at how much you have down and then how much you actually earn, because, there's taxes, insurance on a property, there's upkeep, insurance on property.
Yeah.
And so what is your actual net at the end? So that if you made $10,000 at the end of the year, right? How much would you invest to get $10,000 a month, a year?
Right.
Right. Or $1,000 a month, right? At what, standard rate, capitalization rate is, really been higher lately because, the, interest rates are high.
Right.
Right. So to understand that, but I love capital is if you can deduct the expenses of the rent and then have the accelerated depreciation. So in other words, here's a 37-year depreciation on a house or a rental. Well, they way scooch it up so you can get a lot of it the first year. So if someone gave me $1 million so it's profit, then that's why I would invest it right away, so I wouldn't have to pay taxes on that $1 million.
Right.
Or as much tax.
Right, because then you use the depreciation schedules and of the rental to offset the money.
Right. So So anyhow, it's involved, but that's why they need people like me, right?
That's right. That is right. All right. Last question.
Yeah.
In closing, this is the question I like to always ask my guests. If you had one piece of advice that you could give to you have some grandkids, right?
I do.
So you can give to your grandkids and your great grandkids. You're like, this is what Grandpa Don said to hang your hat on. This is the most important piece of advice that you're going to give them. What would that be?
I when my daughters would go out to go out to a dance at school, or they were going to a group, I always said, go to give. When I was in high school and I went to a dance, I would go and try to ask the wallflowers. I'm sorry for that, if that's the wrong term now. But, those who were no one asked to dance, just so they would have a dance, to go to give. It's infinitely more enjoyable, and the rewards are there. If you're there, oh my gosh, will anybody ask me to dance? Or, should I ask for a dance? I don't know. Or as opposed to, I'll just go ask. To help with the food at a party or wherever you go, at church, if you're, go help serve the, food after church or whatever. Go to give. That's,
it's a good piece. So instead of this kind of goes into the don't ask what you're getting, ask what you can give.
Yeah. That I think about that a lot, because that's really going to make you happy. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I look back on mine, and I played Monopoly so often. Investing in real estate was a cinch because I understood the principles. Monopoly, the game, teaches you. Yeah. Go cheap until you can buy a whole bunch of property, and then you'll win the game. And to love unprejudicedly to everyone. There's so many people who seem to be mixed up in this world, and instead of sitting in judgment of them, just love them. I'll tell you a story. I hope you don't mind me telling you this story, but
sure.
It real quickly, and that is the other day. I mean, this is like April 16th, my birthday. I was at Swanage Park nearby with my wife. We were going to go walk, and a guy got out of a car, nice, decent car, truck, decently dressed, came up to me and said, "You piece of," the S word, right? And I'm going, "What'd you say?" He said, "You're a piece of," and I go, I was ready. I could take this guy.
Right.
I was ready to get, and of course, no, I'm here to love. I'm here to bless this guy somehow. I was too emotional to get very far other than peace, brother. And so as he walked away, I was just praying to know what to say or think. And I just saw him enveloped in God's love, just like a petulant child wrapped in his mother's arms. The child doesn't know what they're screaming about. But the mother's simply, "I love you. It's okay. I love you." God's arms around them. And instead of focusing on he's on drugs and what's wrong with this guy, and I would have carried it for 3 or 4 days, right?
Sure.
And I just let it go. And I just left him. And then the most wonderful thing happened. I realized I was loved too.
Right.
Dude, I'm crying almost because it was so freeing. And so what a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
So when I say go to love, just love without prejudice. Everybody needs it.
Yeah. And we don't know what other people are going through, right? Like that's definitely a big part of it. So.
Yeah, we have no idea. And what do they need most? Love.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, Don, thanks so much again for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Those are some great, awesome things to talk about in real estate, but also just in life.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that matter, right? Like there's so much to life. Real estate obviously is a huge part of it because everyone's got to have someplace to live.
Insurance is a big part of it, dude.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you have someplace to live, you have to have insurance, but it's a big deal. And it's something that people need to make sure that they're taking time for. So, just recap real quick in closing, guys, make sure you're working with somebody who has integrity. I think that's the biggest issue to take away because that person then is going to be able to guide you through the process of finding what works for you. And that's what really matters when you're buying. And then make sure you're going to give and work with people who are looking to give. So, all right. Well, that's all for this week, guys. Thanks for joining us. And we will talk to you next time.